there's going to be another leg down. See, that's when he'll get worried. When the double dip arrives, then all the mainstream conventional people in denial will start wondering, hey, what's going on? And until that happens, they simply don't have a clue. Paul Krugman hasn't got a clue. Bernanke hasn't got a clue. They just don't. What's happening is so different from what they've experienced in the past.
And you called all of this years ago, so, and I understand you like to be, precise about things, but in your gut, when you're sitting around having dinner with your wife or family and thinking about your own future, thinking about your children and grandchildren's future, what does Dr. Paul Craig Roberts think that this country and this world's going to look like 12 months from now?
I don't know whether it'll be 12 months or 24 or 30. But when the dollar goes, we're not going to be able to pay for our imports. If you can't pay for your imports, see, we are two-thirds dependent on energy imports. So you have a lot of transportation disruptions and disruptions of food deliveries to grocery stores, and you don't know when there's any gasoline and when there isn't, and probably they'll have to kind of reserve the gasoline for the police forces. So, and when you go to Walmart, all the so-called cheap goods will be very expensive. So when it finally happens, it's going to be very bad. Now, it's entirely possible the rest of the world will prop this up longer. They may say, oh, we can't let this happen. The Americans have nuclear weapons. They're unstable. We've got to prop it up. And so they may prop it. It may go on for 5 or 6 years. But it's something that they can't prop up forever. Even foreign countries, the Chinese may say, let's keep buying their debt. Let's keep it going until we can figure out what to do. So it could last even after it collapses, just because the rest of the world is too uncertain about what happens if we have to pay the consequences of our moronic policy.
Well, Doctor, you are the economist, and again, listed as one of the top economists in the world, but just as a layman, it looks to me on Main Street like the collapse really happened last year, and they've just covered it up with the stimulus to a certain extent, but with unemployment over 20% in the real indexes with every economist we have on. If this isn't the collapse, I'm going to hate to see this collapse you're saying could come in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years.
Oh, no, this is not the collapse. When the collapse comes, it's going to be much worse than anything.
So you're talking about, that sounds road warrior-ish, food shortages, water shortages, gas shortages, fuel shortages, and then that's my final point in question. I drove to our East Texas family farm to do some deer hunting with my children this weekend, and I literally, no exaggeration, driving 2.5, 3 hours, probably saw 45 police cars. I would drive there 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago in college or high school. I might have seen 3. It was so many police cars pulling people over. So much, and half the billboards on the roads I drove on, half of them were government. Tattle on your neighbor, tattle for child abuse, tattle for guns.
Right.
So I'm already living in a once free great nation. The last vestiges are being removed, and it's being replaced with science fiction tyranny.
That's right. Well, Alex, at my gun club, when I go to the gun club, the police are there in force every day. They get to use it. They got automatic weapons. It sounds like a war going on. There'll be 25, 35, 40 police officers there spewing out lead faster. It's unbelievable. And I said, what are you doing? You practicing for some kind of competition? And they said, no, we're practicing. I want to be sure my guys can win the shootout. And I said, shootout? And this was a very rich county. upset. With who? And they just looked at me.
Yeah, it's the shootouts with you.
I think that's what they're practicing for.
No, I have the documents, sir, as you know. I mean, they are gearing up for all-out war. And don't they know they're working for a bunch of Bernard Madoffs that this doesn't have to...
No, they're getting unaccountable power. And, you know, the police have always had a large contingent of bullies in them. And they're just getting unaccountable power, and they're going to enjoy using it.
Well, that was my final question. As it implodes, as we go into this long, dark night, slow incremental depression, and as you're saying, the establishment's on the same course, so it's a foregone conclusion, don't the police know that as they're CPSing everybody's kids and tasering and SWAT teaming and taxing and arresting people when they're not going to have insurance or even money, you know, to pay the tickets, and the jails are full, don't the cops know that desperate people do desperate things, and that it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy? They're going to get their war, and it's not going to be three crackheads they're fighting?
They're going to have to learn that. No, I don't think they realize that. Look, what the future may look like is a high unemployment and high inflation. So it would be very threatening to the general population. They'd be out of jobs, but prices would be rising. And this is a situation that they can't survive in. It's not like the Depression when you're out of work but prices are falling.
Is that called hyper-stag inflation? Is that hyper-stag inflation?
It's hyperinflationary depression. That's the real danger. I'm not absolutely certain it'll happen, but I'm certain that is the real danger. And they're not thinking about it. They're not saying, how can we be sure this doesn't happen? It's not even on the radar screen.
Well, the people I know in the country who have been lower middle class are now on the verge of all going bankrupt. Everybody I know in the country around Austin and East Texas, and I'm in touch with a lot of rural people, and they say, yeah, we go to small towns 1 mile over the speed limit. They pull us over, give us tickets, want to search us. Yeah. I was out in the middle of nowhere. Our ranch is in the middle of nowhere, and I saw police every time I drove to the store 18 miles away. I mean, it's just total infestation. And I guess cancer doesn't know it's cancer, does it, Doc?
I guess not, Alex.
My God. So how do you see it all ending? Just in complete civil war, or maybe just like Mexico, a bunch of poor people under jackboots?
Probably like Mexico. But, the joker is we have all these nuclear weapons. So we don't know whether the rest of the world will say, hey, let's keep them going until we can figure out what to do about them, or get them under control.
But Russia had nukes, and people let it implode.
Yeah, because that was the way we were taking it over. And, of course, Putin stopped that. But, I think that we are far more dangerous than the Russians, because they were imploding in part because they gave up their belief in communism, and they lost that kind of dangerous aggressiveness. But, of course, we just play it every minute of every day in Afghanistan and Pakistan and Iraq and wherever else.
So the world knows this is a psycho, decadent, mad dog killing machine.
Right. I think that sums it up. I think that's the way we're perceived.
And I think the message with 9/11 is the establishment knows that anybody with a brain can tell that's an inside job. So it's a double-edged. For the general public, it's used to scare them to go along with the police state. But for the rest of the world, it's like, yeah, we'll blow these buildings up to launch wars against you. That's why Gary Hart wrote that letter to Ahmadinejad and said, look, we stage terror attacks. Look at the Gulf of Tonkin. Look at the Maine. You better sit down and shut up. I mean...
Yeah.
It's crazy. It does make you laugh because it's so nuts.
Well, but I'm not laughing at you. I'm just...
No, I understand. It's just laughing at the craziness.
Mm-hmm. And the real craziness is that, there's so many Americans that think themselves as the salt of the earth and good people, and if they heard us right now, they would really think we were completely insane and anti-American and we should be arrested and shot. And I guess you hear from those people from time to time, but they think of themselves as just really decent people, and they're completely brainwashed. They have no clue. They have no idea what's happening.
Amazing. Well, Doctor, thank you for spending so much time with us, and I look forward to seeing you out in Florida when we come interview you. I may come in person or may just send the crew, but God bless you, and I really appreciate you spending so much time with us. Have a great weekend that's coming up.
Well, all the best to you, Alex. Wish you plenty of success.
Thank you, sir. You as well.